Hi, Sandra Wilson here to help you have a happier relationship in midlife. And I thought I would just pop on to do a little video about conflict in your relationship. So we're kind of taught to believe that conflict is a bad thing. You know, avoid conflict, avoid arguing, avoid confrontation. But really, when you think about it, what's the opposite end of the scale to conflict? I like to think of it as being people-pleasing. So on the one hand, you have conflict, discord, disagreements, confrontation. On the other end of the scale, you have what I like to call just the people-pleasing, the martyrdom, the putting up and shutting up. And neither end of the scale is particularly healthy or helpful in your relationship, but sometimes conflict is necessary. Sometimes you just have to speak your mind. Sometimes you have to say no to your husband or your partner, or to anybody. Sometimes you have to protect your boundaries and remember that you are not responsible for other people's emotions. And this video I'm making today is inspired by a lady I've just been helping, a lovely client whose problem really seems to stem from this idea that she has to always be keeping the peace. She has to behave in a certain way to make sure other people aren't uncomfortable. So really it's almost like a managing other people's emotions type scenario. And she had been like that for quite some time, since she was very, very young. I don't want to go on too much about the client, but really when I thought about it, I just thought, well, there is space for conflict in your relationship. If you are putting up with something that you shouldn't be putting up with, there is space for disagreement if you happen to have a difference of opinion. There is space and safety in establishing a boundary and saying no more frequently. For example, if you don't want to have sex, if you don't want to do something, if you don't agree, if you don't want to go somewhere, if you want to wear something that your husband or partner doesn't like, there is room for you to safely establish a boundary, even if that might lead to a bit of conflict. It's generally all about how you manage this. So if you are going to establish a boundary, speak your mind, disagree, not people please, it's generally worth picking your battles, of course, to preserve your sanity. But just start off small. In what way have you identified that you might be pulling out all the stops to keep the peace, to never have an argument, to always be perfect, to always have the house looking perfect, to always be looking perfect yourself, to be a good girl? Do you feel pressure to be a good girl? I hope this has been, it's a bit of food for thought, isn't it? If somebody happens to be watching this and it resonates with you, and you know that you fear conflict, you shy away from conflict, you shy away from voicing your opinions, and you might be a little bit of a people pleaser, it doesn't have to be this way, especially if you are compromising your own voice, your own well-being, your own identity, and your own fulfillment and enjoyment of life. You do not have to be responsible for other people's emotions. You are not responsible for anybody but yourself. Of course, you might have young children, I don't mean that. You don't have to do it. Okay? So if this makes sense, if this resonates, if you're having a problem with establishing boundaries and speaking out, if you really feel that this is something you want to do but you are too afraid of conflict, and you want to learn how to communicate in a way that does honour your boundaries but also tells the other person that it's not okay, but you're kind of making the peace at the same time, if that makes sense. So it is possible to learn how to communicate in a way that is empowering and authentic, where you protect your boundaries, but you avoid, you know, the more kind of unpleasant conflict. I hope that makes sense. So if you're a woman, even if you're a man, it doesn't matter. If you have been struggling with this issue, I am here to help you. I do a lot of work in this area, and I'd be really interested to see what you think. Is there space for conflict? Can it be done properly? Or do you always have to avoid it? I'll be back tomorrow, hopefully with more interesting content. Let me know what you think. Bye.